Good morning, my name's Beth and I just want to spend a few minutes today encouraging you and talking to you about one of the first and original encouragers in the Bible and what we can learn from his life. So to start off with, I wanted to ask whether you had a nickname. This could be something that has come from something in your character, it could be from something that's happened, a particular situation or circumstance. But the one that I had when I was at school was people called me lots of variations on mum. And the reason that they did this was I would mother them, or try to mother them, regardless of whether they wanted me to or not. And that came out of something that was in my character. And I want to talk to you today about someone who had encouragement in his character as part of who he was. His name was Joseph. He's a character we might not have heard a huge amount, but his nickname was Barnabas. And the reason he was given the nickname Barnabas was because that means son of encouragement, and that again was very much part of his DNA and who he was. Now, he's not mentioned very often in the Bible. The majority of what we see about him comes in Acts, the book of Acts, and we're going to look particularly at Acts 11:23 to 24 to kind of draw some lessons from who he was. So they say, when he arrived and saw the evidence of the grace of God, he was glad and encouraged them all to remain true to the Lord with all their hearts. He was a good man, full of the Holy Spirit and faith, and a great number of people were brought to the Lord. And there's a couple of things that I just want to draw out of that just this morning. The first is that he encourages believers. He sees a situation, he sees people who need to be reminded that they're working alongside Jesus, that they're doing a good job, and he gets stuck in and he does that. And to get all geeky and English teacher on you, the word that's used there for encourage is actually the imperfect tense, which means that it wasn't something that he did as a one-off, it was something that he did repeatedly. Encouragement was part of who he was and how he dealt with other people. Just a reminder today to think about the way that we interact with people. How can we encourage everyone that we come across in our interactions with them today, like Barnabas did? It then goes on to talk about how he's a good man. And we see this in a couple of different ways. First of all, in this passage, he'd been sent to a place called Antioch to test out and to look at what was going on and how the gospel was being preached to the Gentiles. People trusted him to go and to discern what was true. People trusted his character. We also see that in Acts 15 when he actually had a falling out with Paul. They had a sharp disagreement. But despite that disagreement, they both went on to go on and to minister and to spread the gospel in loads of different places. And actually they doubled their mission field because of that. The reason they disagreed was Paul didn't want to take Mark with them on a mission. Mark had let them down previously, whereas Barnabas looked at him and saw who he could become. Again, that idea of encouragement coming out. And he said, no, let's give him another chance. So the two groups went off in two different directions, but ended up doubling the mission field as a result of that. And Paul later goes on to talk really, really well of Barnabas. The idea that actually, even in disagreement, we can still be on good terms with people. The next thing it mentions in the verse is that he's full of the Holy Spirit and faith. Barnabas' story actually starts in Acts 4, where it talks about how he sells his field and he goes and he lays that money at the feet of the apostles. The idea that he's sacrificial, that he gives sacrificially, that he gives wholeheartedly is something that I'm really encouraged by to kind of keep aiming for that. And then finally, it goes on to talk about how many people were brought to the Lord because of Barnabas. And that's not just because of who Barnabas was himself and the encouragement he gave to people, but it's also because of what that encouragement grew in people. So Paul, when he first became Paul, when he'd had the Damascus Road experience and been given a new identity, gone from being Saul to being Paul, Paul was not trusted by a lot of the Christian community, understandably, but Barnabas met with him and said, no, this is a man who can be trusted. This is someone that we can trust and put our faith in. And because of that, whole mission fields were opened up to Paul. So I think I just want to close by saying there's so much we can learn from Barnabas' life. There's so much we can learn about encouragement and growing other believers. But I think we also need to remember that we shouldn't despise the day of small things. Barnabas himself isn't a name as well known as Paul, but he went on and had a huge impact through his encouragement and the way he opened things up to Paul. So be encouraged today, not only to encourage others, but also not to despise the small things. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a great day.